people will never say this, but if you ask them, has God ever failed you? They'll be like, no. But most of them want to be like, yeah.
Well, yeah.
They have. And the reason you feel like God has failed you is because he failed to meet your expectation, not that he's failed in the situation.
Yeah.
You had an expectation of how you wanted it all to play out, and it did not play out according to your timeline, the way you wanted it. So you do feel like God has failed you.
Some of what we're talking about, I want to transition just a little bit. And this next topic, it really does go along with consumer Christianity. But it's, have we failed? You kind of came up with something more catchy. What was it?
Who failed who?
Yeah, who failed who?
And that's really kind of talking about expectations. And what that looks like is I feel like two things are happening in the body right now. People have expectations of churches and leaders and ministries of what they think it needs to look like and what it should feel like.
Sure.
And then there's those of us that have expectations of God, of how your life circumstances and scenarios should have ended up. And that's real.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if this is just me. So I'm going to confess this. I don't know if this is just me, but how many of y'all know y'all have been in that financial situation, right? And you're asking the Lord, and then you're like, the lottery's 450 mil? Lord, this would solve every problem that I have if I hit the lottery. Like, this could be it, And I would tithe. I mean, I'd totally give 10% to the church. I could even give 20. Like, know, you're like negotiating with the Lord. And then
on how he's going to help you win the lottery.
Yeah, and like how this would be the best plan ever for your life. Like, like you're telling God this because this is going to solve the problem, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the only problem is, and you're so generous. So you're like, you're going to pay off your parents' house. You're going to buy so-and-so a car. You're going to put them to school. And I remember the Lord saying to me, well, I want them to depend on me for that, not you. Why do you think you're the solution to the paid off house or that person needing a car? And it could be your family member, and you're doing out of the good because you want to help your loved ones.
Right.
He goes, oh, so you want to be God. You want to be their source. Right? And so he goes, you're not mature yet.
Wow.
You're not mature enough to handle that level of financial money going through your hands, because I see you'll throw seed everywhere. You won't do what I tell you to do with it. You're just going to do what you want to do with it, because these are the desires of your heart, which are good desires, right?
Not that
paying off your parents' house, retiring them. Those are all good things. They need a car. You're buying them a car. But the Lord is trying to have personal relationship with people so that people trust him.
Absolutely.
So now I tell the Lord, if I win the lottery, I ain't going to tell nobody nothing. There will be signs, but nobody's going to know about anything, Lord. And I'm just going to invest all of it, and I ain't going to tell nobody. So that's where I am with that now. But I'm just saying, you might have a solution to the way you think your problem needs to be. And what happens is when it doesn't turn out that way, healing is a very good example. People are like, so-and-so's in the hospital.
Yeah.
God's going to come through. Like, this is it. Like, this is the perfect will of God. And then God's going to get the glory. And you get excited because it sounds good in your mind. But God has a different plan. And then we find ourselves in a very disappointed place.
Yeah.
Because we think God's plan is just, or he didn't come through.
Yeah. I think of just different situations that I've seen, not even just that it's happened to me personally, but even people that have been close to me where there's been some type of injury or something like really traumatic. And you question the Lord and go, but Lord, I believe what your word says. I believe this, and I believe in the power of prayer. Why am I not seeing it? And so it can lead to a place of disappointment, but at the same time, God is still God, and we don't understand his ways. We don't understand his plans. And so that doesn't mean that God's failed us.
Right. But I think expectation, it severs our relationship with God when our expectation and the way we perceive the problem to be solved is solved within our mind.
Yeah. Well, and we try. I mean, as it's our human nature, like to try to solve something and figure out a solution. And
and then tell God about it. Yeah, that's just who we are as people. Like, no, I mean, I get it.
No, I'm laughing because I mean, that's me. You know, it's been me.
Yeah, I'm like, God, you should totally do this. You should totally open a door, and this is how you part the Red Sea. Like, this is how it is. I've just come to this place where I'm just like, I'm not going to give you my ideas because you're not even listening to me.
Yes, he does.
And I think it's fabulous. I think my days are fabulous, but I guess yours are better. You know, so like trusting that he does it, everything he does works for our good.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you don't get the promotion, he's still working for your good. If you don't see the immediate healing, he's still working for your good. He's going to, and so can we believe that? And so I feel like unmet expectations, I think I told you I read this on Instagram where it says expectations are resentments under construction.
It's so good.
So you have expectations and all that's happening is your resentment is building up because your expectation is not being met. That could be in relationship. That could be with God. That could be with your church. And now you're just resentful and bitter.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is like, I feel like the Lord, he'll deal with that. Like things have to come to the surface too, in order for there to be growth and for healing too, because if you allow those unmet expectations, that bitterness, that hurt just to linger, it just grows and it limits you and other areas of your life, including your growth with the Lord, because you're staying in a place where you're not allowing him to walk you through the process. You're just kind of sitting in it. You know what I mean? And when I think about our walk with the Lord, it's a constant movement. It's a constant movement. And when you want to stay in those feelings of disappointment, and I get there are some really tough seasons that people go through, so I don't want to make light of that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Not at all. But we have to come to a place where we trust the Lord, even when we can't see our way out of it.
Yeah. And I think, when I was going through a season that way, and I remember telling the Lord, like, I think, like if you did this, I mean, it would be amazing if you did this.
Giving him all the solutions.
Yeah, giving him all the solutions. And, I was disappointed in the way it all ended.
Sure.
I remember feeling a lot of grief and just like, how did this happen? And I remember him saying to me, do you trust me? Like, yeah, I mean, I guess I trust you. I'm like, this could have ended better than this. I thought you were going to come through, And I remember him saying, Julie, I have come through, but can you give up your need for understanding in this matter and trust me? And what I came to realize is I was having difficulty giving up my need for understanding. I wanted to understand what God was doing. I wanted to know, what's your plan? How are you going to do this? I wanted to know. Heads up. I needed a heads up from God about how he was going to move so I could expect it. And so for me, walking that out was giving up my need for understanding. And that's hard because it feels like a risky place. Or are you going to do something? I just told you I was going to do something, but what are you going to do? And him saying, I just want you to do nothing so I can do something. Yeah. And so we want to do something. We want to fix it. We want to solve the problem. Yeah. And so giving up your need for understanding is you have to crucify your flesh. Yeah. You have to be in a place of crucifying your flesh. Yeah. And that's hard.
Yeah. The scripture comes to mind that his word is a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. And somebody, I don't know if you were in the room, it's been probably a couple years ago, but we were just kind of sharing and we were in a time of prayer and that verse came up because so often we want to be able to see the whole path ahead.
That was me.
That was you. I thought it was. Yeah. And you're like, Taryn, you're not always going to be able to see the whole path ahead. Sometimes that light is only showing you the next step. And I remember that because I'm like, that's so true. That is me. I have wanted to stay, I've gotten to this place where I'm like, okay, Lord, I surrender, I submit, but I got to see this far at least, right? So you're still kind of maintaining control of things, but when you're really surrendered to him and you're allowing his word to be a light for your path, you've got to trust the process, even if you can only see the next step or two.
Yeah, I mean, think about a lamp unto your feet. So if you take a lantern and you put it to your feet and that's how you're walking in a dark space, you only have enough light to see a couple of steps.
Right.
Okay? We want to know how it's all going to end.
Right. I'm trying to get the biggest flashlight of my life.
I need to see, I need stadium lighting. Right. to lighten the way to see how this is. And you know what we do?
Yeah.
If we don't see how it ends, we don't even want to take the first step.
It's exactly right. Yeah.
That's the problem with humankind when it comes to relationship with God. God, if you're not going to show me the end, I'll stay right here with my light.
And you've talked about this too. It's a self-preservation.
Yeah, you're protecting yourself because you're afraid to take that risk. You're afraid of what people are going to say, how it's going to look.
Afraid of the disappointment.
Yeah, the disappointment of it. And you could fail multiple times. And then what if you fail once? What if God wasn't in it?
Oh, what are people going to think?
Yeah.
What are people going to say if I fail? Yeah.
And so we don't trust that process. We want to see how it ends. And imagine the Israelites having to have a vision or a brochure of the promised land before they left Egypt.
Sure.
Come visit us.
Yeah.
This is your new place. Houses are wonderful. Honey flowing everywhere.
Right.
If they needed a brochure to go visit the promised land or decide, would they have left Egypt?
Right.
And where you have to come with that and the expectation matter is, do I like where I am now? Do I feel like this is all that God has for me? Because if the answer is no, you're not really risking much if you take a step.
Right. Right.
You're not risking much if you take a step. And so we have to come to this place, it may be, I think Faith Cho said something, it wrecked my world.
Yeah.
She said one time, I think it was like an Instagram reel or something. She said something to the fact of, can you do it unto nothing? And what that means is, can you be obedient to God to take an action, but to the world's eyes, it looks like it's irrelevant, and I don't know why you did that, right? And can you do that knowing that God he's working all of that out into the greater picture? And she was talking about a blog that she had that she only had 7 readers.
Yeah.
And the Lord kept telling her to write the blog. And she's like, why? While I'm building this church and this ministry, where I write and spend my time writing a blog for 7 readers. Why does that make sense? In the world's realm, that does not make sense.
Yeah.
And we will be like, that's not productive. We're not doing that. But if the Lord is telling you to do it, the question is, can you do it if it's unto nothing? And unto nothing, not that it's unto nothing, but it's unto nothing in the human mind.
Yeah.
To the human mind. Can you do it? So if it ends where you didn't expect it to end, are you still okay with trusting that he's doing something else behind the scenes?
What I was going to say too is, what the Lord is telling you to do might look different from your neighbor or another family member or even somebody in your church. And I think sometimes you might feel that there are judgments of, is that a good use of your time? But if you know in your heart that you're being obedient to what the Lord has called you to do, that's a place where there is growth, and the Lord is working, like you said, working all things out for good, even if it doesn't look like it's productive or profitable in what as the world would deem it.
Well, you also have your, spiritual life coaches, the people that are hear God for everybody. And so they'll be like, what are you doing? Why would you spend money doing this business? You've been doing it for 5-10 years. You're not really making a ton of money. Why would you continue doing this? Because the Lord told me to.
Yeah.
Because the Lord has told me to. It's called perseverance. It's called long suffering. It happens to be a fruit of the Spirit.
Right.
So it doesn't make sense to the world. And if it has to make sense to you in your mind, God will honor and have grace and mercy for you.
He does.
And he did for me until I came to this place. He goes, from this point on, I need you to give up your need for understanding.
Wow.
So what that means is, all this time, I've been giving you the behind the scenes scoop about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. But now I need you to level up, trust me. And when I say something, be like, yeah, this relationship has enough equity that I can trust him in the things that don't make sense to me and that don't end well, or I don't think end well. But there is a reason for why he's doing it. And so I think that expectation has to come from a place of faith and growth. If not, you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
And so my husband was really good at this. He takes risk, and then when it doesn't end well, he's like, well, I don't know what God was doing that. We'll carry on. And I'm like, wait. We're just going to move on?
Yeah.
What about the failure? He goes, I'm like.
Which is wild for someone who's operates in perfectionism, right?
And works.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to
Like you can't wrap your head around that.
No.
Yeah.
But he did not operate in that, didn't grow up in that.
Sure.
So he was just like, meh, it is what it is. Let's move on. I did.
You're probably like, what?
Yeah. So for him, being obedient was sufficient to what that all looked like. And so even though it didn't end up the way he thought it was going to end up, he was okay with that. I was not okay with that.
Yeah.
I struggled with that very much so. And now I'm okay with it. But now I look cuckoo to everybody around me. They're like, what are you doing? I'm just doing what the Lord tells me to do. None of it makes sense anymore. Accolades, just throw everything out the door. So you do come to that place because he'll give you the grace for that. But so now my expectations have changed. I have high expectations for what the Lord is wanting to do in my life.
Yeah.
Now, you may not see that right now, like with what's happening in my life.
Sure.
But I have very high expectations for what the Lord is doing. And I trust him.
Yeah.
And so because of that trust and that being there, I think now my expectations, I can get my hopes up for what God is doing. And I think before it was like, if I couldn't see it, it was disappointing for me.
I think sometimes you talked about you have equity in your relationship with the Lord. I think sometimes we're fearful of the unknown, but if we just take a moment and look at our track record with the Lord, his track record rather, not ours, because we are insufficient when it comes to like staying consistent, right? But if we look at his track record with us and all of the times that he's been so faithful and he's come through so many times, I think that alone can help us have just a trust in the future of what's coming ahead, because I can look back and go, okay, last month this happened and the Lord came through. And I think our human nature, we're so quick to forget sometimes, which is why, we talked earlier about intimacy with the Lord and journaling. When we're able to reflect on what the Lord has done, I have a friend of mine, she's got a notebook just of like all the things God has done for her. And she loves to go back and revisit that because that builds your faith. And so the point is that God is not someone who's going to fail you. You just may not understand his ways. And so if you go back and look like, wow, God did this and this and this, it boosts your faith and builds your expectations for what's to come. Yeah.
And I also think too that when we're looking back of everything that the Lord has done, I think it creates a heart posture of gratitude.
Absolutely.
Because you think about where you've come from. And even though he may not move in this area or that area, that's not the point. The point is but he has moved.
He has. And part of that is recognizing that he has moved and having a heart posture that is full of gratitude. That alone right there does so much work within you to be able to anticipate what's to come.
And I think you can ask the Lord, hey, I'm having difficulty with the expectations.
Yeah.
I'm having difficulty with not understanding your ways. Like, can you give me peace with that? Walk me alongside and show me how to get through that. Because have you ever met people who like tell you, oh, this is not going well and this is not going well.
Nothing ever goes well.
And then you're kind of listening to them like, but you've been married a long time. You've got great kids. Like you have a pretty stable life. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Like your kids are healthy, none of them, they're doing well. Like, I don't know, like they're alive, they don't have chronic illnesses.
Sure.
Like I think about, friends of mine who've lost children, from cancer and things like that and the grief that comes. And so I just think perspective plays a big role in understanding, man, God, he is good.
Yeah.
There's a lot of evil in the world. There's a lot of darkness that's happening that we're very much sheltered from.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't understand how sheltered we are from it because it's not our daily life.
Yeah.
But for those of people ask anybody working in the medical field or in an emergency room, the types of things they're seeing, the types of situations they're dealing with, the family dynamics, the health dynamic. Like there's just so much happening. Ask a police officer.
Oh, yeah.
What they're experiencing, a first responder, what they're seeing. Because in those situations, there's perspective.
Yeah.
My friend Chris, he always has this, he's literally the most calm person I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
And he always asks, is anyone dying? Okay, we don't really have an emergency. So that's my new slogan. Is anyone dying?
Yeah. Perspective. Yeah.
Then we're going to be okay. And he's a first responder. He used to be EMS. So he's like, and he's served in the military. So he's like, is anyone dying? No.
Everything's fine. Yeah.
Everything's fine. We're not in a state of emergency right now. So I think manage your expectations with the Lord and know that it's okay that you don't need understanding in why something has not happened or needs to happen in those places. Like find contentment in that place. And that may be something you have to like walk through with him. Because, with us, we have our own timeline. Well, I'm this old. Like this is, like.
I thought this was going to happen already.
Yeah, this should have happened because apparently the world has set a timeline of how everything is supposed to look. When you're supposed to get married, when you're supposed to have kids, when you're supposed to get done with college, when you're supposed to retire, when you start a business. But what if you're 60 and God calls you to start a business?
Yeah.
Are you not going to do it because retirement at 65? I mean, like how you have to choose. There has to come a point where like, you know what? I like the world's way. I like its timeline and I just want what the world has, or I'm going to do it God's way.
Yeah. I think, when you come to a place where you recognize like as a child of God, he wants good things for his children.
Yeah.
And so when I think about that, I'm like, I may not know how we're going to get from point A to point B, but I trust him because he's my father. And going back to what I said earlier, when I look back at the track record I have with him, he's never failed me. Even though through those times I haven't necessarily understood how we got there or the whys behind it, but he's not going to fail you. And, success to the world's eye, it doesn't equal what the Lord wants to do. And so we have a hard time grasping. So understanding, going back to what you said, being okay with giving up understanding. And it's truly a trust and a walk with him. And I know it's easier said than done, but you just have so much more peace when you do it that way than kind of fighting this like constant tension because you will have expectations of your own.
Yeah. People will never say this, but if you ask them, has God ever failed you? They'll be like, no. But most of them want to be like, yeah.
Well, yeah.
They have. And the reason you feel like God has failed you is because he failed to meet your expectation, not that he's failed in the situation.
Yeah.
You had an expectation of how you wanted it all to play out, and it did not play out according to your timeline, the way you wanted it. So you do feel like God has failed you. But what has failed is your own expectation.
Yeah.
It wasn't God that failed. And so I think, and people won't say that because they don't want to sound, no, God has never failed me. And somebody asked me that, has God ever failed you? I'm like, yeah, plenty of times. And then only to be like, no, he didn't fail you. I just had way too many expectations of how I wanted God to come in every little situation that I journaled down that I need to break through in.
Yeah.
You should come through this way in this area and this way in this, and this would be the perfect time to come do this. And so giving up your need for understanding is total submission of your life to him. There is a submission of, hey, in this area, I trust you. I don't know what it looks like, but I trust you. But that doesn't mean I don't have moments where like, hey, this is the longest going prayer I got here, and you ain't saying, you crickets. You're crickets on this thing that I've been praying on the longest. So not to take away from all of the things that you've done, like I have those moments.
Yeah.
But
I think that's okay.
Yeah.
Like
it is.
That's just like your relationship with the Lord.
Yeah. And, I remember I told you one time that I was praying, and I remember you had asked me to pray for your husband. You remember this?
I don't know.
Okay. So you're like, hey,
Maybe.
make sure you pray for Sad, blah, blah, blah. You said something. And I got done praying, and I remember calling you like, hey, I don't know about anything else I prayed for, but your husband's good. It's the only thing he answered me on. So
Praise the Lord.
Everything else, I got nothing. I don't know if it's going to work out. But your husband, he's good. It's going to be great. But the other stuff, he didn't say anything. So I think people, it's human nature to get weary on not hearing or even seeing in the world realm, like any movement on something you've been praying on for so long,
I think so often we have ambitions, we have desires, and the Lord places those desires within us. But I think where I see such a huge blessing in my life is the times where I'm interceding and I'm pressing in for other people.
Yes.
Of course, I'm bringing my requests to the Lord, but I also feel like he truly blesses and honors when you are interceding and you're putting others' needs before your own, because that's kingdom. And like we talked about this, we talk about it often, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and then all these things will be added. The Lord knows what my needs are. He knows what your needs are. But if we're building the kingdom, if we're serving others well and we're helping meet their needs or we're interceding on their behalf, he does meet our needs.
Yeah. So my mom, I was maybe 10 years old. And my mom said that she told me a story of, I think there was a prophet that came to the house or something, and they were having a prayer meeting.
Yeah.
And when he prophesied over her, he said, you always pray for your husband and your kids, but your breakthrough for those two areas lies in your intercession of other people's needs. And so learn to sit in the presence of God for others as well.
Yeah.
And my mom said that when he told her that, she was kind of like, but are you going to fix my husband's sick? Like, are you going to fix that? And my mom told me that she decided that she was going to pick like 4 things that were happening in the church, within the church body, with the believers, that she wanted to intercede personally on behalf for. And she said it shifted. It shifted. It led to breakthrough.
Yeah.
It led to breakthrough. Taking my focus off of it.
Off of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your immediate situation. And so it's like I challenge people, pick like 5, 6 people in your church that are going through like difficult seasons and times, and choose not to even pray about anything that you need or want, and just intercede for them.
Yeah.
I challenge you to do it. There is and not only that, it creates in you love and compassion and empathy and understanding for other people as well. Because when you intercede on their behalf, you're changed too. You celebrate with them. You weep with them in their brokenness. And so I think it's such a healthy place for Christians to want to, that's why it says when 2 or more are gathered, because there's supposed to be more than one person praying about the issue. And that's how community is built.
Yeah.
And so when we think about that and think about how that needs to look, I just challenge people, like really go back to your expectations of the Lord and sit and think, is this his expectation? The other thing I do see people do as well is hear a prophetic word, play out how that's supposed to play out in their mind with the timeline. Make every decision based off of what you think the interpretation of that is, and then become disappointed when it doesn't play out the way you thought it was, and that's not what it meant.
Right. Or you receive a word and you're like, expect it to happen the following week.
Yeah.
Right. And we don't understand his ways. We don't understand his timeline. And so, I mean, I'm guilty of that.
I always tell people, when I learned this the hard way, I got a prophetic word once and they included the word, and it will happen soon. Okay. They don't mean the world standard soon. It's definitely some heavenly soon. Yeah. Because it ain't soon. Yeah. But when somebody says something's going to happen soon, I have like a normal expectation of what soon is, and it ain't heaven's expectation. So if you ever get a prophetic word with this will happen soon, just
well, soon is relative to everybody, right?
Yeah, just get some popcorn and get in your recliner, because it's not going to happen immediately, is what I'm saying. And so I think expectations need to be probably taken to the altar.
Absolutely. Well, and I think too, when something like that is given, depending on what it's about, like oftentimes the Lord has to develop character. There has to be some pruning or some growth or in areas that needs to happen before you can step into that season of your life. And I mean, I've been questioning the Lord too. I'm like, Lord, but like when? And
I remember telling you, you're like the fastest, like accelerated growth person I've ever known. Like, how are you annoying God about when? Like everything's happening so quickly for you.
Which I'm glad he's doing it, because I'm probably the most impatient person that I know.
But at the same time, you're like, when? It's just taking forever. I'm like, this ain't forever. Like, this is like fast. This is the accelerated AP pathway to getting done, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that's why everyone's story is unique. And
everyone's story is unique.
Yeah. And so I think I just encourage people, if there's some expectations of how you think even restoration or healing or something is supposed to look, take that to the Lord and see if you could submit that. And you might need to do that more than once.
Sure.
And give up your need for understanding.
Yeah, maybe weekly.
Or daily.
or daily.
Or daily, depending on what it is you need to give up your need for understanding for. Yeah. And the longer you've been praying for it or seeking God's guidance or wisdom in it, it's harder for you to give up your need for understanding because you want more understanding in that area. But he's good and he is kind and he is loving and he will provide you the peace that passes all understanding to give up that need for understanding. And it helps build that trust and it just strengthens our walk with the Lord.
Absolutely.